Hey guys, this here is Getaway Driver 101, and today I'm going to be giving you an explanation on what frame rate is and how you can either achieve higher frames or make your frame rate run smoother. Now, I've been seeing some videos go around on YouTube from somebody named, let me pull him up on here, Possible Now. The dude uses two links and claims that you should download FPS basically for DSL tweaks. Now, I'm not saying a game booster isn't okay to have on the computer, but I don't really recommend adding plugins when Windows should have everything to supply what you need, including for calculations. Now, you may have some people that may come in and say, oh, well, it's not that hard to increase your frame rate. You just got to download this and download that, and download this and download that. You shouldn't have to download anything to increase your frame rate. If anything, it should be based off of your graphics card or your memory or your settings, not based off of, oh, well, you got to download this application, you got to disable your security, you're going to go here and disable all your security, and then you're going to go in here just to be able to have higher frame rate. That sounds like, honestly, the biggest BS that I've ever heard about games. And that's what made me laugh so hard about this situation that I was reading on and watching videos on because it was like, people don't seem to understand that they have all the settings there on their computer right now. You don't have to you can't download memory. You can't download FPS. But there are people out there that still think that you can do that. And it's really funny to me that people think you can do that because it's not how a computer works. Your memory is based off of your hardware. If your memory says it can only do 6 or 7,000 or 8,000 memory speed, that's what it can do. If it says it's 32 gigs, that's what it is. You can upgrade it. You can pull your memory out of the computer and put faster memory, which yes could increase your frame rate, or it could decrease your frame rate depending on the strain that you're putting on the motherboard. See, the motherboard itself has a strain level, and it cracks me up to see people be like, Possible Now. He tries to tell people that they're having high latency and high ping. What I don't think most people really understand what latency is. Right now, in the top left of my screen, you can see LAT, which is called lat. That is latency. Now, it says it's got a latency of 0.5 ms. There would be people that would freak out over that and think, oh my God, my computer's got latency. That's not how that works. That is called render latency right there. When you pull up your latency types, because you can do that with NVIDIA, you have several. You have several. You have system latency, average system latency, PC display latency, PC display latency, PCDL, and then average mouse latency. What I am currently seeing is called RLLAT, which is render latency, which render latency has to do with textures loading. Now, as you can see, I am running 195, 200 frames in this game. I fly out in space, my GPU usage will drop from 99, 98, 72, whatever it's doing, to a solid 200 FPS once I get a little bit away from the space station, or 199, there we go. So now it is 200 FPS right now. Game's just chilling, 200 FPS, the computer's not straining, the computer's not dying, the computer's not choking. And what cracks me up is that this dude makes it sound like that your computer is got all this ping issues. That you should download these softwares to fix your ping and latency. Ping is with your internet router, not with your graphics card. That is by far the funniest thing I've ever seen in my life. And what cracks me up is this dude has got like 15, 20 some odd thousand subscribers, and I don't think any of the people that are watching his videos realizes that they're downloading a what is called as a payload. They are downloading something that is stating that it's one thing when it's really not. It's another thing. He's using a URL shortener to shorten the URLs, which affects how the computer understands what it's doing and what it's clicking on. Basically, when you click on something, it's going to thumbprint from your computer to a server, which is going to thumbprint your ID, and it's going to know who you are and what server you're clicking on. Well, if This server that he's using URL shorteners on, the server gets shut down. Since he's using a shortener on it, it can go back in and manipulate the token, which can reactivate the server, even though the server was shut down, which, that is technically a felony, a fraud, whatever. It's against the law. It's something that is ridiculous. And the way I like to do it is just search up power, bring up power plan, go to power options right there at the top, and you're going to have this selection. Now, it's usually got this show additional plans. You're going to click on that. If you have high performance, click on high performance if you're gaming, if you got a gaming computer. If your gaming computer can handle the stress, you can go to ultra performance. What ultra performance is going to do, let me even show y'all with HW hardware monitor on how this works. This is why it's so funny to me that people think that they could download FPS in memory when that is not how your computer works. This dude even has a video about high CPU usage saying, oh, if you're at 87, 89, 100% usage, you got to go in and disable all your security. That's what he wants you to do so you can put a freaking crypto miner or whatnot on, or Dogecoin miner on your computer, because it's not going to be noticeable for a long period of time until eventually one of the security companies realizes, hey, this guy is creating malicious links. We need to go in and close these down. Well, people can go and report his URLs. They can go and report his whatever they need to report to make sure that their computer isn't being infected. So as you can see, we're going to go ahead and go right about here. So right here is the clock speed of the computer. Watch this. Watch this. I put it on balance. Watch what the computer's about to do. You're about to see some magic happen. Oh, it's downclocking. Very, very slowly. Now, these ones here have just dropped to 43. These are still 5.5. They went from 5.6 to 5.4 to 5.3. And the computer is auto downclocking. Now, let's say we go to Power Saver. Put it on Power Saver. Look at that. All them clocks just dropped to 1,000. Now, let's boot up a game on Power Saver. Let me show you exactly how frame rate works with your own PC and power plan. It's funny, but it's also like, how do people not realize this is how their computer works? As you can see, my CPU usage is now doing 24 to almost 30 or 40% instead of doing its 8 or 9%. So it's getting a higher CPU usage because it's lowered the clocks, which means it's having to use more cores to do the same task. More cores means the computer is using more resources to still do the same task. Now, as you can see, the frame rate it bounces, goes to 150 like it should. But let's see how the frame rate's affected in the game on full load. And just so you know, if you look up his channel on Possible now, the dude, every video is a duplicate. He duplicates his videos and gives it a new title and a new thumbnail. It's the same videos over and over almost, but it's like he's taking small little clips and cuts out of them and re-posting the video. Now, as you can see, my frame rate is only 120, 188, 131, 178, 190, 160. It can't hit 200, even though it's trying to. It's trying to hit 200, but it can't. You know what he would say to this? That's high latency. You're getting lots of ping. Your FPS should be higher than that. And I could get 400 frames on this computer on really any game, just about. Not quite any game, except for maybe Call of Duty, Battlefield, and a few other games. The AAA title, I ain't going to get that kind of performance out of, even if I tried to get that kind of performance out of. It would not let me. That is how that is. It would not let me, and it would not give me great performance playing on Power Saver mode. Now, since I am on Power Saver mode, as you can see, the CPU usage states that it's doing 24 to 30%, while the computer is just sitting and running a game. Now, it is getting very close to the 200 mark, but as you can see, the 1% lows are really hit, really aggressively, in fact. So if you want better frame rate, there's two things you got to do. You got to go into Control Panel, put your computer on high, ultimate, whatever one that is there. If it's on Power Saver mode, flip it from Power Saver mode to high or ultimate performance. If you want to use balanced, go ahead, go for it. Because I guarantee you it's going to be better than this stupid setting. And I'm not trying to say this is a bad setting. This setting is meant for older computers. As a computer gets older and starts malfunctioning, you can drop it to a power saver consumption to maybe extend its lifetime, but then it may make the computer run more poor. So it's one of those features. Now that I'm back at Ultimate, let's go back into the game. Now I am at 16, 15, 18, solid 200, 1% lows at 168, 169, 163 at 200 solid. So if you're wanting these high frame rates for your Fortnite game, your shooter games, your games in general, you are going to have to increase your power plan. You can do high quality. You can go in here, go to global, start simple. Global. Don't do what I have. All this stuff I have is for a very high performance computer. Don't do what I have here. But I'm going to show you what you can do on a mid-range or low-range computer to bump its ability up. So you're going to turn quality to quality, or you can put it on high quality. I usually would recommend quality because quality is a good balance between quality and performance. You can't really tell much with high quality unless it's a racing game. With a racing game, you could tell that's when you choose program settings. You want to set preferred maximum performance, not auto, if it will load this setting and quit being glitchy. Normal. Then you got preferred maximum performance. So you want to make sure you're on a state where you're running this preferred maximum performance, this quality, or even high quality, depending on which one you prefer. And what that's going to do is that's going to increase your ability to have more frames. Now, is it going to increase your frame rate by like 50, 100? No. It's going to increase your frame rate by about 50 or 60. It's going to increase it by 25. It could increase it only by 10 frames. It depends on the graphics card and it depends on the setup of the computer. Another thing you can do to increase your frame rate is from power plan and this. After these two are done, and you know your computer is fully up to date, all your drivers are fully up to date, and everything's installed correctly, and you know you have no corruption, you could turn around and go into BIOS. If your BIOS has the newest update out, which if you don't know, you may have to do that, and updating a BIOS can be very dangerous because you can brick your computer. If you don't know what you're doing, don't do it, because if you don't know what you're doing and you do it, and you don't know what to do and you do it, and you turn the computer off in the middle, or you have a power surge in the middle of that update, your computer is now a paperweight. So don't update BIOS unless you know what you're doing. But if you know what you're doing, do it. I recommend that. Turn on XMP 1 or 2, depending on what your memory can handle. If your memory can handle XMP 1, do that. Now, let's say you turn XMP on and you go back to Windows, and all of a sudden the computer falls on its face, gives you a black screen, and you have a dummy light turn on your board. Don't freak out. You let it sit there with the dummy light on. You let it sit there until the computer figures out what it needs to do, because it's going to recalculate its memory. It's going to do memory training again. Once it has calculated what it needs to do, if it detects that it was a failed boot, if 3 more attempts happen, it will revert itself back to its original state. So you let it cycle through these boots if it fails. Because if it fails, the computer's going to start boot cycling. If you turn XMP on and XMP is not working correctly and is causing the Windows computer to do weird things or even blue screen, you can go back in and turn it off or turn it down, depending on what you need to do. You can turn your OC clock down on it, or you can turn the actual functionality of the memory from 1 to 2 or from 2 to 1, depending on which one or which way your motherboard goes. Because some motherboards have it where 1 is the highest, and other motherboard brands have it where 2 is the highest. So pay attention to your clocks on that as well, because it will change your clocks, it will change your voltages, and your entire computer will consume more power. The more you turn these power plans up, the more power you are consuming, but it in turn gives you more stability and your games run smoother. Stability is key for frame rate and functionality. If your frame rate and functionality has bad stability, you're going to get screen tearing, you're going to get jitters, you're going to get freezing, you're going to get crashing, you're going to get games closing down for no reason. If you're thermal throttling, the computer will close games down for no reason. If you're thermal throttling, the computer will also make it to where you cannot play the game in a relatively good way. The game will be jittery. In fact, I can give you a demonstration. Now, this is not recommended to do, but I'm going to do it anyways. Cinebench. As I have No Man's Sky open, let me close a few of these down. Boop. and boop. And then we're gonna start a let's just go with multi-core. Now I got a multi-core running. Now what you're about to see is you're about to see this hit 100%. So we go 10, maybe. Okay, so now it's at 100%. It has not taken a hit to the frames. So yes, you can have your computer on these ultra states, but don't let it sit at 100% CPU for no more than maybe, if it sits on 100% CPU longer than 20 or not even 20 minutes, really 10 minutes, that's a problem. You can go 100% CPU for a little while. You can do 100% CPU for up to about 20 minutes, maybe, depending on the hardware specs and the type of coolers you got. But if your cooler cannot handle 100% usage and you're immediately thermal throttling after, let's say, 30 seconds, because for me, it's about 30 seconds, and I have a pretty good beefy cooler in my computer. When my computer hits 75%, my computer starts to get warm. Does that mean I'm thermal throttling? No. Once I hit about 100 C, and I'm at 100 C constantly and I'm at 100%, it's going to thermal throttle. It's going to start going from 5,000 to 4,000 to 3,000 to 2,000, then maybe even 1,000, because the computer is going to try to protect itself to keep itself from being damaged by a clock speed that is making the computer get too hot. So keep that in mind, that if you're running these high performance plans, it's going to adjust your clocks. It's going to adjust all these to 4.4, 5.5, 5.6, 5.7, 5.8, maybe even 5.9, depending on the CPU you got. And some of them will be as low as 4.8. 4.8 and 4.3 are perfectly fine for gaming as well. Anything below a 3000 megahertz level usually is going to take a little bit of a hit to your game. So if your megahertz are not at a high megahertz rate like this here is your max rate. This is your average rate, what the computer is using on average. And then this is here is what the computer is basically said, hey, I've hit this highest point, I've hit this highest point, I've hit this highest point. This here says, oh, I've hit 555, 87.7. Well, it's doing 55, 86.8, you know? So what this is doing is it's telling me the information that I need to know what is the highest point that I've hit, what is the point that's running right now, and what is the average point in the center. Now, if you go up here, since I just did a benchmark, it's going to have the highest point rated. Now, the benchmark, as y'all saw, only ran for probably a few seconds. If we start it back up, you're going to see in just a second that this here is going to climb 89, 91, 89, 91. 89, 70, 70, 70, 76, 80, 80, 90, 92. So I'm not going to quite hit 100C, even if I'm at 100% CPU usage. But once I do hit that 100C level, the computer is going to be like, oh no, bro, I got a down clock. And that's when you're going to lose lots of performance and your game is going to start running sluggish. That's when you're going to start having all these running glitches, maybe even texture issues, because your game is working the computer so hard that your computer is actually thermal. So keep that in mind, that if everything checks out, you have everything set up where it's running these high performance and you're still getting this terrible frame rate, or you're getting like a terrible play out in general of how the computer is running, it's freezing, it's glitching, it's glitchy, start running commands. Start with an SFC scan, diagnostics repair, system integrity file checker, um, memory check. You can do a memory check on the computer. You can do a check disk. A check disk runs a check disk command, which will let you know if you have any bad allocated sensors. So from there, you should start from one point from SFC. If nothing else works after you turn all these settings up and you're running all these ultra settings and you're getting these weird glitches, and maybe even the operating system itself is glitching, start with SFC scans, work your way up until you hit your virus scan. And the reason why I say start with the command prompt is because when you don't start with the command prompt, as you can see, I'm going to pull it up. Oops. You can bring up, you can just type SFC, it's going to bring up this menu, and then you're just going to highlight, drop. Simple. Enter, and now it's going to do an SFC system file check. If it comes back and says, hey, an integrity violation was found, we repaired the integrity violation. What that means is it detected a corrupted file or something that was physically could have harmed the computer. May possibly not, but it could cause the computer to blue screen or cause the computer to freeze or stutter for no reason. Another thing to keep in mind, your antivirus has to stay up to date too. So all of that will play a factor, including if you have an antivirus that likes to start up automatically and start running a diagnostic scan or a system deep scan or a rootkit scan or whatnot. It's all going to change very quick versus how everything else is running. That is how computers work. Even with video games, you're running about 80 million some odd codes between the operating system, a game, and whatever other BS you're running. So just keep in mind, you do have to maintenance your computer if you want to be able to play your games. And to me, it cracks me up when I see all these new people that go out and go get computers, and then they're like, "Why am I getting this issue? Why am I getting that issue?" Well, did you go through any of your settings? Did you check anything out? Did you make sure your settings were set correctly? Did you make sure that you didn't have any settings that got flipped? Did you make sure you didn't have anything that you turned off? One, you should not have to disable your security to have high frame rates. That is another thing I've seen online where people recommend disabling all your security to have these high 300 frames at 4K. That's fake. That is not real. That is literally BS. Literally BS. So make sure that if you are doing this, you're doing it safely, legitimately, and that you are only manipulating what needs to be manipulated correctly. Don't be downloading arbitrary programs that have no signatures. VirusTotal check it, drag and drop a file into VirusTotal. VirusTotal home, you can save it to your home page, and you can literally choose any file. Let's just say I choose this, and I drop it in there. Now, some files are not going to like to communicate with this application because this application is going to run 75 other scanners on it. Now, of course, right now, as you can see, that was one file to give y'all a demonstration of. Its hash is so large that it may crash VirusTotal. So if you have issues like that with certain applications, which you should be able to run literally any application or even drop any application. This, in fact, I'll give y'all a demonstration of a game. So let's say I go to my games. Let's say I take, I don't know, the game I was just on. Boop, confirm, blah, 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 confirm. Well, it's going to check this game, see if it's ever been detected for malware. Now, of course, there are some games out there that will have false positives, which are normal because some games physically have to manipulate System 32 to run because they have to go to cardinal level, which are games that involve anti-cheat systems. That's why when you're seeing people online mess with anti-cheat, you're going to be very careful messing with anti-cheat because you can damage some stuff. Like, it is what it is. See, right here, 1970-01 access date. This definitely wasn't uploaded in the 1970s. I mean, it's obvious it's a newer game than 1970, but it's saying its creation date was 1970 access date. That is false. That is wrong, and that is not correct. So you do have things like that where you will have incorrect things. You also have a community on here. And what else is nice about VirusTotal? Let me just close this one down because this one froze. Is that when you're using VirusTotal, you go URL check and search URL. So you can file hash, IP11 positives on it. Community 3.k, blah blah, Google, blah blah. And you see where people are like, they post like IP addresses and stuff on here too of locations that they've seen that have been bad or good. Now, as you can see, they have one here that has a score of 48 by domain of Microsoft Map. www.3 Google plus whatever pay google.com advertise service. And from there, what it is that each and every one of these programs are going to have some way to file map it, like this file map, live running files that are accessing the internet. You can even go so far as to see sometimes you'll see cell phones, Sometimes you'll even see other things that don't make sense. But that is literally how this whole system works. It is a integrity checker to make sure that your integrity of your system has not been compromised. And if it has been compromised, what do you do to fix the issue? You can uninstall and reinstall all of Windows, which, okay, fine, easy method. Just, do the easy way out, which is fine. That is a perflex. So, I hope y'all learned something today about what you need to do to get your FPS to be very great FPS, maybe even increase stability, maybe even check sensor health with SSDs, or maybe even check power cycles. Now, there are going to be some people out there that are going to be like, well, how do I know if it's not my power supply causing all my stability problems? Well, there's an easy way to check. Put the computer under a small load or mild load, and the three things you should never see drop for a power supply are right here, 3.3 volt. If this ever drops to 2.8 to 2.5, the computer can crash and blue screen. If this here is ever to drop below 3 volts, that can be a problem. See, it's dropped at 4.96, which is okay. It still stayed right on the scratching line of 5 volts. And that is fine if you're having a bit of like a line that's kind of bordered. What that means is that you are using the computer correctly. You are using the perfect amount of what the power supply can support. Now, this here is your 12 volt. If you ever see this down in the 11s or 10s, that is a problem. That will cause major issues because this here is for your motherboard. This one here is for your hard drives, SSDs, or fans, or even AIO plate on the back. This one here is for the communications and detections of all the sensors aboard the motherboard versus the power supply. So in return, them voltage levels are communicating with everything in your hardware, everything. And so if they get too low, you will have states saying that their Fortnite is freezing and that it's freezing up and that they can't play their Fortnite. Well, as you can see, native 4K, I can still do this. Not many people on PC can flick their mouse that quick and their computer not freeze. Now, it looks good, right? Looks great. Looks fantastic. If we drop it to the original resolution that it was running, which was 25, 1440, 60, keep changes. Do y'all notice a change in anything? No, because it's a cartoon game. With games that are cartoony, it's not really recommended to max their frame rate up. Now, as you can see, I'm doing only 120 frames right here. That's because of all these players, they're rendering so many chunks looking in so many different directions that it's rendering everything it possibly can render. Now I'm back up to 154, 153, 174, 200 even. Or I can look down at the world and render everything possible that it can render. It can't render the tiniest objects possible, but it's trying, and it's going to do about 140. Now if we dive straight down, I can spin and rotate my mouse. Now, there are so many people that would be like, how is your computer able to run and do that without freezing on Fortnite? It is not, you don't have to download nothing extra. It is based on your own configurations. Your own configurations is going to conflict with how well the computer actually runs and performs. As such, don't be a dummy and think that you can run everything at this like beyond level. Like even my computer, I have to put certain things on medium. Now what I recommend on medium is effects, posting process, which is going to affect CPU, this is going to affect GPU, this is going to affect global, all settings, and then virtual shadows, you really only need them to be where you can see them. You don't need them to be way off where there's no load actually at. Like seriously. Quality, DLSS. Now, DLSS, they have other models of it here. You got Intel, you got low, you got medium, you got high, you got Epic. I find that Fortnite runs best on DLSS. And that's because I feel like the game was originally coded on DLSS for NVIDIA graphics cards. I mean, look at it. I'm running medium settings for shadows. Do those look like medium shadows to y'all? No. It's still got the tree, it's still got the swing, it's still got the wind physics to it, still got all the movement and the processing physics. Like so when it says normal, think of it like on a console perspective. If it's normal, if it's medium, it's normal. If it's low, it's below console standard. Medium is basically like what PS5 runs. So if you were to put all your settings on medium, you'd be running the settings of, or graphical settings anyways, of what the PS5 would run versus running the frame rate. Because the PS5 is only locked at 60 to 120 frames. Same thing with the Xbox. Well, your PC could do 100, can do 400, can do even 1,000 frames, depending on how the setup is. Now, 1,000 frames, the only way you're going to achieve that is by dropping this to HD. And even then, let's see on how many frames we get. 182, 179. And see, it did not even really change. Well, it did change the resolution, actually. I can tell by looking at it. What I notice is, as you can see under the lip of the bag, I have green haze a little bit, just a little bit, not much. For most people, they may not even notice it. So really, you should be asking yourself the question: if your resolution is maxed out, do you notice it maxed out? Can you go down one level and still achieve what you're trying to achieve for resolution? Like in fact, right here, 153. I might as well go back. I could go there, or I could go back to what I originally had it, because 153 is about what this runs on average. This game on average runs about 150 to 160 frames to 120 minimum. As long as you're not below 90 frames, the game should run perfectly fine. If your game is not running perfectly fine, there are several things that could be causing it. One, you could be having a physical infection on the computer. Two, you have the game in NVIDIA misconfigured. So maybe you need to go into NVIDIA control panel and manually configure the game for performance and manually configure the game for video quality. Now, if I went into NVIDIA, if you don't know what to do to fix it. So what I recommend doing, like for now, I'm only running between 120 and 200 frames. Now, how would you solve the issue between 120 and 200 frames? You lower your FPS frame lock. So if I lower it, it's gonna drop my frame rate for a minute and then it's gonna bring it back up. Now I'm doing 129, 120, 127, 135, and then it goes back to 160, 120. So what that does is when it's moving your FPS lock, it's physically moving the value of how the FPS is able to maximize. So if your FPS value, like let's say you set it to only 160, what that's going to do is it's going to make it where your FPS is higher constantly, even at a higher load, because your FPS is at a shorter rate. Now, there are some people that are going to be like, well, I want 300 no matter what. Fine. Go in and turn your resolution all the way down. And then have fun with your 200, 300, 500, whatever frames, because you're one of them greedy people that gotta have really, really terrible resolution to have really high frame. And even then, look, even then, because of all the NVIDIA multipliers that I have running, I'm only getting 180. So literally, what you should always like be asking yourself when it comes to fucking frame rate is that if you're gonna increase frame rate, don't get so greedy that you have to have the game at a set frame rate. That's not going to happen. Because when you lower your frame rate, what the graphics card's going to do is it's actually going to extend its load distance. It's going to extend its load distance, not by just by a little bit. Not enough to really notice by the naked eye, but enough to where the resolution when you're moving around and sprinting and things like that, that it's able to have the correct load time for everything. And that's why I said, when it comes to, I know I keep saying that, but when it comes to graphics cards and computer, if your resolution is what's tapping out your FPS, then that's honestly something you're gonna have to reconfigure. This game I have set to run at 2560 at 1440 at 160 because I found that when you try to force this game to run 200 frames, it's honestly putting more strain on the game itself and the computer than what it's really doing. Something else to know, most people are not going to have a frame rate above 200. Most people are going to be locked below 200 frames when it comes to AAA titles or high intensity GPU games like this one. This game really doesn't use anything for CPU usage. It uses maybe like 30%, 35%. So it's not even really using GPU usage or CPU usage. It's using mainly GPU, and then the CPU is only doing like the technical stuff, like your items, your objects, your explosions, your stuff that falls apart and disintegrates. It's doing the calculations for like actual object interference. And as you can see, like even when I'm playing, my frame rate is going to fluctuate so much that it does not matter if I'm running 200 frames because when you're doing this in your game, you're generating render time. And that can, like, as you can see, you saw for yourself just a second ago, when you do it, your frame rate actually increases because what you're doing is you're creating a render freeze. You're creating one side from the left to the right. You're telling the right side when you're rotating left to stop, basically on rendering and go to the left. And what that's doing is it's fluctuating its FPS time. So, as such, are you able to increase your FPS and make it run smoother? Yes. Are you able to make your game run to where it's playable? Yes. Are you able to make your game have higher FPS? Yes. Just go to your NVIDIA control panel. Boop, boop, boop. Now, obviously, this ain't gonna work unless I go restart the game or even restart the computer, depending on how the game is with its stuff. But right here, you can go to max frame rate, turn it on, and set that to max frame rate. Then you go down here and go to quality and just set it to pure high performance. Now, if I set it to pure high performance, let's say, just like that, and then right here, this here is a setting for, is it? So we'll turn this off and put that on high performance to get it to balance out high performance and quality, to give it to where the edges are sharper and it has a higher optimization level. Will that work? That depends. That's what testing is for. That is what basically research is for. And that's probably why you came and clicked on this video here today. Is that what I am showing y'all is that you can increase it, but there are pros and cons. When you increase FPS, you can lose other functionalities. You can sometimes gain functionalities. I don't like how it has to start that up to start the game out. Just start the game out. I don't know what it's doing. And this is what I'm saying, like sometimes you have to go in and restart the whole computer. And there's nothing you can do about it. Hopefully I don't have to do that. That is so goofy. I should be able to use my shortcut to launch the game. Thanks for breaking that, Epic Games. Fantastic coding. Now, once it decides to launch, I'll see y'all then. A server, guys, I am back. So now that we are booting into a server, we're going to see what the FPS is really running. And there are some people online that would tell you that yes, NVIDIA Control Panel can worsen your FPS. It can make it worse, can make it run like absolute doo-doo. But literally on high performance, I see no difference in this game. So this game might be better off on high performance only. So, and that's what I'm saying. Like sometimes you just got to go in and do testing. As you can see, I'm doing 140 frames, staring at all these players, just rendering everything in the world. And I guarantee you in the actual game, I'll probably be doing an average of 140 to 160. In fact, we'll run off in this direction, which there's still players. But this is like the proper resolution for this game. Like this is how this game actually looks. So right there's 160, 150, and we're just gonna die. So it's getting an average 125. Go a little bit out this way. And see, that's something else to keep in mind. If you are getting stutters, sometimes it's due to actual frame dip, which frame dip is different than frame loss. Frame dip is where you're having like a physical 200 FPS and then immediately hits 30 frames and goes back to 200. That will cause an insane freeze. So if you're experiencing that, try turning your FPS down and then go from there. As you can see, I'm doing an average 140 now. Now it's 120, 130, 133, 126. So now my average, my FPS has been increased by maybe 8 frames. But on a functionality scale of probably like 25. Because it's regulating up and down. So, and something else I noticed about that one dude on YouTube, he plays in the sky. He does not play on ground. Ground in the sky is going to give you different frame rates as well. Because more objects means more rendering. Hope this taught y'all something. Like or subscribe, and I'll see y'all next time.